without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome the Mile High Flood District Executive Director to the podium. Please help me welcome Laura Kroeger to present The Road Ahead. Thank you.
I always appreciate Mayor Starker because he's really attentive to when I send him a text to ask a question, and the biggest reward he gets is we go out to lunch about once a month. So at least today he gets breakfast and lunch for doing extra service for us, so thank you, Mayor Starker. We also have some VIP guests with us. 2 past executive directors are here. Scott Tucker, if you want to give a wave, and Ken McKenzie. I just lost you. Ken, I don't know, he's at the buffet already. It's so nice we can attract people, and we also have a past board member, Dave Sellards, with us today. So thank you both all for being here. Yeah. This is truly one of my favorite days of the year. And if you know me, that doesn't sound too surprising because I love being with all of you. And it's so great to be together. And as Hallie said, us at the district, we haven't been together in about 6 weeks, so we're happy to be together again. But I also love the fact that our people get to showcase all the hard work they've been doing all year, with many of you participating in that, so we can really celebrate our industry. And then, of course, I really love happy hour that follows this, because as we say here, beer is really great for great ideas. So you never know, that idea could actually present itself at next year's symposium. But we do want to keep in mind that then coffee is for the execution part of that. So our office that we're building is going to have some really great coffee for us to keep working on. Before I get talking about what is ahead of us, it's always nice to know what's new at the district. And I'm actually happy to say there isn't a lot new, because we've all seen so much change in the last couple of years. It's nice to settle in a little bit. But we are really excited to have some new faces with us. And I've got this working. So these are the new faces at the district. We've got Jen Winters, Andy Stewart, Kyle Donovan are our new watershed managers. And it's nice that people show their furry friends as well as their little people. We have Teddy Larkin is joining us on the GIS team. We have Lindsay Franklin, who's joined our admin team. Derek Clark is helping us out in the back. Derek, give a wave back there. Thank you. And as well, we have Katie Kirsten, who joined us again after being an intern. So welcome that group with us. So as we said, we have spent 54 years being renters in Diamond Hill, not the entire time, but that's been a great home for us, but it really never felt like it was a place that really provided the networking and the community that we really sense. And so our board made a really wise decision to make an investment for our own building that we could really call our home. And so we really appreciate them making that decision last year. And I just see Mike Anderson is here from our board, and I'm sorry I did not introduce you earlier, Mike. Thank you for being here. I do want to note that Ken is the one who selected this location because it happens to be 7 minutes from my house, and that's a little embarrassing. So we're moving over to Lakewood, the 6th and Union corridor. We're hoping to move in by May 1st. Dave Bennett, do we have a thumbs up on that? He's the one who has been the mastermind trying to make sure we can all get in and have a really great space. And Amelia De Leon, our HR director, we're really grateful for her really good taste, because as engineers, it really isn't our forte. So you're going to really enjoy the space, and we hope that you can join us there soon. So my favorite day of the year is this. Amelia's favorite day, if you can see here in the middle of the screen, if you can't tell by her expression, is Office Olympics. And we have an absolute great time doing that event every couple of years. And what I really appreciate about doing that this year is the fact that I've got a lot of slides and pictures to use, and I don't have to worry about any copyright issues. So you're going to see slides from that today. Why are we all here? Right? We're all invested in ourselves and our organizations in this industry for continual improvement. And it's so important because we have 3 million people in the metro area relying on us to protect them, their homes, and their businesses. So thank you for taking the time out of, I know, your very busy days to be with us today. Oops. I got ahead because we love this Olympics of how do we shoot for the gold. So at the district here, we want to make sure that all of you are having some fun today. We also want you to cheer if you hear something that you really like. It's important to show our support. And then if you've got time and want to do a little thumb wrestling in between speakers, that is also very welcome. So we want to be focused, right? We know there's a lot of noise out there about pulling our attention in a lot of different directions. And when that happens, really nothing ever gets done. And so we put a solid effort together this year to look at our strategic plan update that help us figure out what it is that we want to focus our time, energy, and resources on so that we can actually get things to the finish line. Really appreciate Holly Pisa, who's the one who's been heading up that process for us, as well as the committee that she's been working with. So the rest of this presentation is really going to be talking about that road ahead and making sure that you know the direction that we're going in. So my goals for today, because Holly never lets you put a presentation in for the symposium without knowing what you want the audience to take away. So this is what I want you to take away, that we are listening. We hear you, and we have to appreciate what you've added to help us become a better organization and a better industry. So we'll hear that today. Also, that I want you to know the direction that we're going in, because we are hoping that we're all going in it together. And so walk away with that. And the third one is to find your small thing. I'm going to take a little side note on this and what I mean by that. So during Lent, in preparation for Easter, I was doing a challenge each day that would show up on my phone. I didn't know what it was going to be. So about 2 weeks ago, the challenge was, instead of using your downtime to listen to music or a podcast or social media, to do something with prayer or meditation. So I was driving back from a meeting in Littleton, and I was in my car, and I'm like, oh, geesh, what do I have to think about? Because my mind goes a mile a minute, and so I wanted some help on that whole meditation piece. So I'm looking in my car, and lo and behold, I find a CD in my little side console. And it was Mother Teresa. My children went to Catholic school, so that's why I would have that. So I put that CD in, and her message was so wise and on target. And what her whole thing about it was, how do we do those small things with great love? So I thought about that for that half hour in the car as I was driving home, and I realized how often I'm quick to dismiss things that are too small, that I don't think they're going to be significant or have a big impact. Likewise, I'm also don't want to take on too big of a challenge because we're afraid of not being successful with it or thinking that's the only thing that people are noticing. And I think as I look at all 650-ish of you, what if we all did that one small thing? And we did that with great zeal and passion. What can we accomplish in the next year? So I hope you have an open mind today to think about what's just that small thing, and don't minimize the size of it, just find it. Because what we're about here is not just talking, but taking action. So when you're here, be open to maybe something that you can do and take on for the next year. So the whole listening piece. We didn't want to start strategic planning with thinking we knew all the answers. And so we hired a firm called Connected Realities to help us do an engagement process. And these are some of the things that we at the district that decided that we wanted to get from that process. And then we went out and talked to about 106 people, hopefully you're all in the audience, and get a wide range to understand what was going on in the industry. What are things that were going well? What are the gaps that we need to do with some improvement on? What are the challenges that we're all facing, to see if we can find some themes? So I really do want to thank all of you that spent time taking a survey, spent time in focus groups, as well as doing interviews, because we heard a lot. And in fact, 113 pages. And there's several of us that actually read all 113 pages of feedback several times. And it really was helpful to help us look forward at the district. Okay, so what did we hear? We heard the good, we heard the bad, and we heard the tough. And so I'm going to give you back that feedback so you know where our mindset was at as we started to look at the direction that we're heading in. And it's kind of like how I look at my kids' report cards. I scan for A's first because it's really nice to celebrate those. And I have one child that's really a celebration for. So we did hear some really good things. about our staff, and I'm so proud of the organization that we're a part of, because as stretched thin as we are, and I know many of you follow in that same line, everyone is there and will drop what they're doing if somebody else needs help. And I think that says a lot about the culture that we have and the people that we work with. So kudos to our team. Round of applause. Thank you. But again, I also, when I look at a report card, I'm quick to go past the A's to say, okay, well, what do we need to improve? And there are definitely things that we heard that we need to improve, like any organization. And what we heard was that we need to look at being a little bit more consistent. How to be a little bit more timely, be aware of timelines. Communication. I think any organization is always about communication, communication, communication. And we also heard about transparency, as well as looking at holistic solutions. And so we have been working over the last couple of months on how to provide more educational opportunities and more training for our team so we can address some of these issues. We also talked about some tools specifically related to project management to help on the accountability side. One of the things you're going to hear a lot more about in the future is doing project chartering. So we really can establish a better system of communicating as a team. And things have changed so much from 10 years ago, and the fact that team consistency, the longevity of that, you would stay together from the beginning of a project to the end of the project. Now with people moving around so much, you're losing that, and we really need a way to counter it. So we're thinking chartering might be a good way to handle that. And then also like how we can improve our processes. But we're finding was we were still missing something. And I give a lot of credit to Mary Powell. Where you're Mary? We were in a manager's meeting, and we were talking about, we needed some new tool to help us understand something. And Mary just shook her head and said, please, not another flow chart. And everything that we've been hearing about we need more training, we need more tools, that's how we were taking it as. And really what people were saying is we're missing the connection. We're missing the people part. That so many of us have learned here through mentorship, working with people, that we just didn't read something and figured out how to do it. And I think during COVID, it's something we're all struggling with as we're coming back, is how do we get back to that one-on-one learning from each other? And how can we be more intentional about that in the future? This statistic just came out yesterday in regards to the time lost that we have in mentoring today. So there's a 25% decrease and a 28% decrease of those that are being mentored and those providing mentorship. That is staggering, really. And just think of how essential all those minutes are each time you are with a boss or you're with a colleague, that you can really gain that experience. So it's something that I think we need to address as an industry and figure out more intentional ways of how we can bring back that connection. One fabulous way is to come to our building. We've got some really great space that we're putting together, and it's not just for us, it's really for all of us. We've got some traditional spaces to be used, as well as some really neat creative spaces with whiteboards and some kind of fun furniture. So think about meetings and what ones would make sense to be face-to-face versus maybe just a check-in works well virtually, but there's some really good opportunities to get together. And as we were saying, even that conversation you have from the parking lot into the building with people, some really good things can happen there. Same with the water cooler. So that's something we're focusing on, and I think as an industry we need to focus on to overcome some of those bad things we saw. But here's the tough stuff. And I don't think there's anything surprising that we heard from all of you of some of the challenges that we're facing as an industry, right? Climate change, scarcity of water, balancing stormwater management needs, of course, staffing, having experienced people. So we did a task of really trying to understand and hear what you guys were telling us. Jim was really specifically paying attention. We think we heard what you said, and then we got to work. So our team has spent this last several months doing 4 workshops to take a look at all that feedback and information to help us determine what's going to help us move forward as an industry and where can we focus our energy. So our plan is shaping up, which I'm happy to say. And the great thing about strategic planning is that, yes, it gives you that direction, but it also answers some really foundational questions you should know about your organization. Like, why do you exist? What is it that you do, right? How do you behave? And then, of course, what direction are you going in? So our plan isn't much different than our previous plans when it comes to the foundation. But I also don't want to talk about a new plan without recognizing the really great work that happened in the old plan. And the big drivers that we had from that plan from 2018 to 2022 was the development of confluence. How many of you know that word, confluence? We've talked about it here. Maybe half-ish. It's a little bit more of an internal-facing tool at the moment, but it really is going to revolutionize how we connect and interact with watershed data and information. So we're really excited to be on our second module of that, which is a little bit more of a project management tool, but you'll see a lot more of that to come. But when we first started talking about that at this symposium a couple years ago, we kind of had this crazy idea that we can make this, and we had some like temporary dashboards. That is such a reality now to see, and it's so exciting that we actually have a really tangible platform that we're playing with and using. So that's why the strategic planning is so important. Another great evolution that we've been doing is, remember the whole word hefflumps? We haven't said that in a while, right? We figured out that that wasn't the best way to communicate what we wanted, but we do want high-functioning, lower-maintenance streams. And so we spent a lot of time on how do we communicate that, how do we design it, how do we implement it, and Mary's going to talk a little bit more about that this morning. So strategic planning is good, it's helpful. And so our next plan, this is what we're thinking. First of all, that foundational information about what we do and why we exist is still the same, right? We exist to protect people, property, and our environment, and we do that through floodplain preservation, mitigation for flood risk, and we provide education. We also looked at our core values, and we had 6. And we were really committed to those 6. But we had a hard time rattling them all off. So we did put some effort into how to reword those, and so we could get them down to 4. Advocate for safety, of course, is still at the top of the list, and we did not change. But the care for people and community, we did consolidate. We had one that was support local governments, as well as care for people and culture. So we really thought those two fit nicely together. And as well as provide resource stewardship, we were able to combine our stewardship for finances, the environment, and even information into one word and one term, which we use as resources. And the last one, advance the practice, is still the same. So this is really what drives the behaviors of all of us at the district, and it was so refreshing to see as many new people as we have, and if you think about this, half the people at the district haven't been there more than 5 years. So we've had quite a turnover, but the heart and the core of how we do work and how we want to behave has stayed the same. And that's a real testament to the people in our organization, so thank you. Okay, so here's the good stuff. What's our direction? Where are we going? One of the big buckets is advocacy. We want to talk about empowerment. We want to talk about knowledge leadership, as well as the workforce. So this is our goal statement, and I can't read that, so you guys are going to have to read that. It's really small up here. But the whole idea is, how can we better influence policy, practices, and regulation, right? And how can we then, as success, have regulators turn to us when it comes to needing an expert in that area? The other part of what we want to incorporate into the practice is the whole idea of community values. We kind of recognized we weren't hitting the mark, just like a little earlier when I was talking about we weren't hitting the mark with recognizing the people part of how do we provide trainings and education, how that is actually done. Same with our urban systems, right? We always look at our hydrology and our hydraulics. Geomorphology came into play, vegetation, but we miss that it's urban because there's people. And if we don't put that into our equation, we aren't going to be able to successfully solve and find solutions for tomorrow. So we're going to spend some time there. These are the action items that I won't get into detail of, just because I really want to keep this at a high level. But I did want to mention that part of advocacy, a lot of that's really done through our professional development and through organizations. because they have a strong voice. And so I really give credit to our team who has taken the extra time to get involved in professional associations here at the local and regional level. This is a picture of all of us from CASFM, and John Valines was looking down at us from his room because he had a newborn that he was taking care of. So that's why John's in the sunshine for us. He was there in spirit. And it's also really fun to recognize the leadership position people at the district are holding at the state and federal level. One of the most impressive to me is Brooke Seymour. In order to get on the Technical Mapping Advisory Council, you actually had to be vetted to the White House. So we now know Brooke has no skeletons in her closet. So we are good to go on clearance. The next part we want to talk about is empowerment, right? And I think this is something that's so important for us because we're recognizing that we're kind of losing steam. Would anybody agree with that? Scootus is the only one. Thanks, Dave. We have been really working hard since COVID. And I think our energy isn't quite where it used to be. We have a lot more regulation, there's just a lot more process, and it's just so hard to get projects to the finish line. And I think it's good for us to talk about that and recognize it and do something about it. And that's why we have it on our strategic plan. And one of the things that I wanted to do with this empowerment was just the recognition of what do we actually mean by empowerment. And so I like these examples, that we want to go from just like stumbling over the next hurdle to let's be proactive and how do we actually clear that hurdle, right? How do we go from just doing a project, completing a project, to celebrating a project? And I think if we can shift our mind and our thinking, we can start accelerating our work and getting things to the finish line and being proud of what we're accomplishing. So that's what we want to do with this, this next task. An example of that, I think, was River Run Park. And that was a project that easily just could have been, let's replace a drop structure. But we just thought differently and wanted to provide something to that community that really didn't add much additional cost. I don't want to say any. But there was lots of partners that came together because when you add those multiple benefits, it's hitting that finish line. It's getting that project that people really get excited about. That can happen in anything. So maybe that could be your small thing today. What project are you working on? Maybe what's a little thing that just enhances it, makes it a little bit better for the community that you're serving? The reality is, if we don't take the opportunities on our projects today, we're a generation, if not 2 generations, from ever going back and attaining that opportunity again. So think about that. Everything you're working on, this is the time to do it. And if it's not, it's going to be held off into the future. So knowledge leadership. I was really struggling with how to name this category. We've had a lot of great discussions when we were in our workshops. And we knew that we wanted to be leaders in knowledge and development transfer to meet our goals, right? But was like, well, why do you say that? And so one night, these 2 words popped in my head. And then the next morning, I'm like, well, I should really Google this because it seems like somebody else would have put these 2 words together. And sure enough, they did. And it really seemed to say exactly what we wanted about how do we work together as a group, as a team, to help advance each other so we can accomplish our goals. And I really think this is the heart of the district. It's really where we have been from the very beginning. Thanks to Scott's leadership and Ben Bonus, Bill DeGroat, they were really the founders who put us on the map of recognizing how we can work as an industry to be this guidance, but not just a governance. You'll see in this plan, a big part of that is going to be Confluence again. Again, we're investing in a tool that we think we can all use to better see data, interact with data, because at the end of the day, we want to make better decisions with it. And so that's coming along. Workforce is our 4th bucket. And we've actually been talking about this for a while because we all saw kind of the writing on the wall of what was happening within the industry, if not, kind of across the area. Something that we really want to focus on is that we all rely on each other to get work done, to meet our mission and vision, right? So we really need to work together to try to retain top talent, right? And have an engaged group in order to solve these complicated projects of tomorrow. So we put this in our plan to start developing some actions kind of, again, being done talking, let's get to the actions of what we can do to move this and progress this idea. And so we're calling this the Great Resetting. We had read a lot of articles early on about the Great Resignation, right? The Great Reevaluation of how people are just leaving the industries. But we want to say is the Great Resetting. And this thinking is because we all rely on each other. We've got this network, and we've got this shrinking workforce. But we also know some other things about what's happening. We know that people are disengaged. We have some ideas of actually why they're disengaged. They're telling us. We also know that mental health is a big struggle for good reasons. How do we deal with that in the workforce? People want meaningful work. And I don't know how we don't stand on our podium every day because what we do is so meaningful. What we're doing is improving the quality of life for people. And I don't know what else you can say besides maybe you're doing brain surgery. But what you do every day is just so important, and we don't ever want to forget that. And how do we promote that and tell other people how fulfilling our jobs can be? A lot of this research that we saw last year was about money, and that in order to retain people, you had to really make sure we gave enough increases. And I think I am really gracious to our board that people are listening to that. But that bottom line is, though, that we know money is not an ultimate motivator. So that worries me a little bit. If we think we can just pay people to stay, that's not going to be the case. So we have to hit that reality and do something different to really think about what the motivation is. And then really just there's this lack of connection. How do we talk to each other? So this great resetting is about us getting unstuck in our traditional ways of how we've dealt with the workforce. And let's start using our scientific brains, right? And this is how we're all trained, is how do we stay open? How do we understand the bigger system that everyone's working in? How do we use data to get creative to solve the problem? And that's how we're going to find that balance. So just a quick example is if you think about flexibility, that seems to be one of the #1 things we hear from employees. They want flexibility. It's also a little bit of a tension point, right, for employers because there's some downsides. I think what we need to do is come together, understand what do people really mean by flexibility, because there's a whole gamut of what flexibility means. I am positive we can find some wins where we can have an in-between. It's not just one or the other, but we've got to take the time to understand it, use the data and information that's provided to us so we can find those right solutions. And I think if we can take that scientific approach with a lot of these workforce issues, we can start getting more creative of how we can keep people engaged and staying within our industry. Because as you know, we have so much work that needs to get done. So that is our strategic plan highlights in a nutshell. We're going to advocate for better policy, regulations, and practices. We want to work to empower people to be champions of their work. We want to use knowledge leadership to move our industry forward and be proactive in finding creative solutions to address the workforce challenges of today. So thank you for your attention this morning. And before your next speaker comes on, why don't you jot down what that one little thing is that you're going to do? Because by all of us taking that little step, we are able to take huge strides as an industry so that we can improve people's lives every day here in the metro area. Thank you so much.